Welcome, everyone, to Buddha Center. It's so wonderful to be with you here tonight to talk about Lama Tsongkhapa's foundation of all good qualities, the source of all my good, this incredible text that encompasses all of the stages of the path to Buddhahood. And it's very rare that we ever have the opportunity to hear even about some of the practices that would lead to Buddhahood. But tonight we have the opportunity, and because we have this human basis of leisure and have met with Dharma teachers, we have the opportunity to hear all of the stages of the path that are necessary to practice and use them as guidelines for us to know if we've realized what we need to realize along the way to become a Buddha. And this is so rare. We're so fortunate. And I just want to rejoice in the fact that you're all here tonight to listen to the same thing. So let's begin with setting the proper motivation. This is a Mahayana teaching. So let's set our motivation with the motivation of bodhicitta. So we'll read the 8 verses on training the mind by the Bodhisattva Geshe Wangdak. And then after that, we'll invite all sentient beings to be our guests once we've set our motivation properly using the guidelines within the 8 verses for training the mind. And you'll see that as you read these stanzas, many of the points that are made don't kind of line up with the way that most of us think. I know they don't line up with the way that I think, but they line up with the way that a bodhisattva thinks. And the more and more we saturate our mind with these pure ideas, the more and more we'll be able to set up a mental basis that will actually allow us to realize this beautiful mind of bodhicitta that is caused and isn't something that just arises out of nowhere. So we're fortunate that we have the ability to practice these things, to engage in things that will help us just familiarize our mind. So we become habituated. So it becomes normal for us to think about cherishing others more than ourselves. It becomes normal for us to have a non-biased attitude. So let's begin. Listen to these words, try to absorb these words, and think about what would be like to be a being who thought like these words. And then with this aspiration, even if it's contrived to be like one of those beings, we'll invite all sentient beings here to be our guest, to be able to hear this precious, precious teaching that's going to be given about the teachings for beings of 3 capacities that, like I said, encompass everything that's necessary in order to become a Buddha. And we know that bodhicitta is the only entrance into the Mahayana. And if we don't practice the Mahayana, we won't be able to become a Buddha. We have to practice everything contained within the Mahayana, both the perfection vehicle and the resultant tantric vehicle, the Vajrayana vehicle, in order to become a Buddha. So the Mahayana vehicle encompasses everything that's necessary in order for us to become a completely enlightened Buddha, where the obstructions to omniscience are completely removed. If we only engage in practices with renunciation and the wisdom realizing emptiness, we won't be able to achieve Buddhahood. We won't be able to achieve that state of perfect love, compassion, power, skillful means, and wisdom, perfect caring for others. We won't be able to achieve that. We have to generate this mind of bodhicitta, because without bodhicitta, we can't traverse the bodhisattva path, and we certainly, without bodhicitta, can't even fathom the idea of practicing Tantra, practicing the kind of resultant path within the Mahayana that one needs the perfection vehicle as a basis of. So we should make sure that we recognize that the Tantrayana, the Vajrayana, falls under Mahayana, and the Mahayana has 2 categories, perfection vehicle and tantric vehicle, or resultant vehicle. And both of these are necessary in order to achieve Buddhahood. So it's very important to recognize this. And the only entrance into the pathway that goes through all of the Mahayana stages of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning, the only pathway that leads you to the completion stage of the highest yoga tantra is the Mahayana pathway. And the entrance into that is bodhicitta. And in order to get bodhicitta, as we talked about last week, you have to generate great compassion. And in order to generate great compassion, it's necessary to have a non-biased attitude, an attitude that equally looks at sentient beings as equally valuable as you, equally important. So we see, and in order for these kind of ideas to come about where you want to help others, you have to have learned about the 4 Noble Truths and understand the truth of suffering that you're stuck in and how to get out and why you need to get out, etc., in order to set yourself up to even care about others for a second, and care about them not because they can do something for you. Care about them because you recognize that they are sentient beings, and like you, they want happiness and want to be free from suffering. The 8 verses on training the mind by the great Bodhisattva Geshe Wangdak, with the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectively hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I had found a precious treasure, difficult to find. When others, out of jealousy, treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one whom I've benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me badly, very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone, without exception, all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. Now, with this kind of motivation, a motivation that wishes for all beings to have happiness, the causes of happiness, wishes for all beings to become a Buddha, wishes for one to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. This idea that all sentient beings want happiness and the causes of happiness, just like you. All sentient beings have Buddha nature, just like you. Recognizing this, and recognizing that every single sentient being in the universe looks for a few states that they've never been able to achieve: state of satisfaction, state of freedom from suffering, and a state of complete happiness that doesn't change into something else, or that isn't a kind of level that just isn't enough ever. All sentient beings want to know how to fix the problem of cyclic existence and fix the problem of having a happiness that's contaminated. Fix the problem of the uncertainty and the worry that goes on over and over and over again, wherever we are in cyclic existence. If we aren't working on what we need to do in order to be free from cyclic existence, we're only creating the causes for more and more samsara, more and more lack of complete happiness. So the way that we can get complete happiness is to engage in causes for complete happiness. And the way that we can remove suffering is engage in practices that remove those adventitious defilements that are the stains of the afflictive obstructions that keep us in cyclic existence. So tonight we're going to hear about how to remove the afflictive obstructions that keep us in cyclic existence and how to remove the obstructions to omniscience. So because of that, everyone that we invite here has something that they need that we have to offer, that the Buddhas have to offer. So with that in mind, imagine that you have the qualities of the Buddha to be able to reach all sentient beings and have the 60 melodious speech, have the speech that can reach to a sentient being and they'll understand whatever you're saying in their individual language, and they'll understand in terms of what they need to understand for their particular scope. With just one utterance of a word, Buddha reaches everyone, or Buddha can reach every single sentient being that's got, the condition present for him or her to arrive, to help. So imagine that you have that special, special quality, and also imagine that all sentient beings have something that is very, very special, and that's the condition for you to be able to connect with them. Because we have to have the conditions within our mind streams to be able to connect with the Buddha. We can see that everybody in the world, all the 8 billion sentient beings, not everyone connects with the Buddha. It's because not everyone has the conditions within their mind stream that they've created before that were concordant with being able to meet with the Buddha's teachings. We're so fortunate that we have this position that we're in. Now imagine that you start to bring every single sentient being here in the universe to be able to hear how to achieve their goals and how to achieve their goals in their own individual languages and their own individual aptitudes, because you have this resultant quality of Buddhahood. Have this ability to reach them in the way that you will be able to reach them as soon as you start working on getting rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. As soon as you generate this mind that aspires to enlightenment, you'll be able to start to work with more and more and more sentient beings, and eventually be able to work with all sentient beings. So by doing practices like we're doing tonight, our minds will ripen into the mind that would actually want to think about cherishing others more than ourselves, and will actually ripen into a mind that cherishes others more than ourselves, into a mind of altruism that couldn't imagine not taking the task upon oneself, the job of bringing all sentient beings to a place where there's no suffering, where there's only bliss. Imagine that you invite all of the hell beings, the 8 hot hells, the 8 cold hells, the surrounding hells, all of the hungry ghosts, the animals, animals in the ocean, animals in the land, animals in the sky. Imagine you invite all human beings. And again, imagining as you're doing this, you're thinking of all the human beings that actually you know and exist, not these kind of dots in a stadium. And think about the ones that you feel so close to, and those people that you see as strangers, maybe walking on the street you don't know. And then again, move on to those folks that you find displeasing to you, that act in ways that you don't particularly like, and that people that you like don't particularly like. Think about those beings that you find difficult, those beings you find difficult having love for when they're talking. Think about whoever those beings are and see if your practice is making it less of a struggle to want to bring them all here, because you recognize that they're just under the sway of their afflictions. Bringing all of these beings here. And one thing I would like to share with you is just think about this concept. Think about the person who's acting in the most awful ways. Think about historically those folks who have engaged in murders and mayhem and have hurt so many people and have done just the most terrible things that you can think of. Think about those beings and think about how that makes you have a distaste for them. Beings that are alive right now that are doing such things, that are maybe going to do such things, or you think could do such things. Think of those types of beings, those out of control beings who harm, who engage in so much harm. And you think of things like, oh, I wish they would just be jailed. I wish that they would be able to pay for everything that they've done. Yet when you go to the zoo and you see the animals in cages, sometimes you think, oh, I wish they could just be free from that prison. But the only way they end up in predicaments like that is by engaging in the things that you hate right now. Yet you're so quick, and I'm so quick to pet the dog and say, Ninji, I want you to be free from suffering. Yet we're not so quick to have compassion for those that are creating those exact causes to be in that position. It's like we're totally okay with the result of that bad behavior and having compassion for that, because we think that it was created by something that was someone different that was creating bad things. Ninji, we feel bad for them. But the person who's acting out in the way that you don't like is acting in that way because of previous habituation, because of previous causes and conditions that give rise to that kind of behavior. Just like the animal in the zoo, the lobster about to be boiled has created causes and conditions that give rise to that experience. Why ninji here? Why compassion here and not compassion here? We have to look at these things. We have to see how crazy our minds are, how we're so selective about the way we care about others, and how it doesn't even make sense when we look at karma and its results. Wow. We're fine with the resultant state that was caused by something horrible to say compassion. but the horrible cause that's going to cause this horrible state of suffering that was caused by something that they're not in control of at that moment, we don't have a compassion for. We just hate those people. We call them other. We say that they're not our people. Yet all of those people that you say aren't your people are just trying to have happiness and be free from suffering and are going about it in an ignorant way, just as you've done in the past. And your judgment and your anger and your hatred will cause you to act in exactly those ways in the future. And will those actions that you're doing in the future, will you want some grace? Because you aren't in control, your afflictions are in control. Be mad at the afflictions, not mad at the person. The person isn't the anger. The person isn't the killer. The person isn't the afflictions. The afflictions are the ones that are causing the killing, that are causing all of this harm to go on. This person is under control of afflictions, of causes and results, just like something that you would easily develop compassion for, that's not independent and not in control. So think of these things. This is how we practice the Dharma. It's not like a pretty game of flowers and roses. It's looking at the dirty parts of our mind and cleaning them. Recognizing that we aren't who we like to kind of superimpose on ourselves, this kind of beautiful person. We're not that person. We're this person that cherishes ourselves more than others and will do anything to take care of this I that we think inherently exists that doesn't exist. There's an I that subjectively exists, but it does not objectively exist right within the object here talking to you. There's no findable I. With that being said, think about all of the different types of beings, friends, enemies, and neutrals, and now demigods and gods, and recognize as you're moving your mind towards all of these beings and moving a mind of compassion towards all of them, recognize that you are empty of inherent existence. This compassion, this calling upon sentient beings is empty of inherent existence. The sentient beings are empty of inherent existence. The Heart Sutra tells us there's nothing in the universe that's not empty of inherent existence. But everything that we can posit within conventional truth exists. Cars and houses and ducks and parakeets and Jeffs exist, but they don't exist the way that we think they exist. So as we do virtuous practices, we should try to engage in those virtuous practices. It talks about them being pure virtuous practices in the illumination of the thought, when we're recognizing the absence of inherent existence of action, agent, and object. So this is the three spheres: action, agent, and object. The doer, the doing, and the done to, or if you will, the object. So if you're engaging, that example is always generosity of the Dharma, or generosity. The person who's being generous, the generosity itself, and the person you're generous to are all empty of inherent existence. And this is the three spheres, are empty of inherent existence: the action, agent, and object. So as we call all these beings here with the words from the Samantabhadra dedication, the King of Aspiration prayers, as you're bringing them here, try to think about the aspect of the emptiness of inherent existence that is part of the entity of all things in the universe that exist. Every entity in the universe has part of it, this emptiness of inherent existence. We have this idea that something inherently exists right on the object, somehow existing within the object, and that thing doesn't exist at all. This is non-finding when we start to engage in ultimate analysis of this thing that feels so naturally like it's there. This non-finding is the non-affirming negative that we arrive at through ultimate analysis. The mind of ultimate analysis, the valid mind, validly perceives an ultimate truth. Then that becomes a valid ultimate analysis. And the ultimate truth is the emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena. So when this truth combines with ripening paths like renunciation and bodhicitta and concentration and so forth, it's like an atomic bomb that blows up the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. In the language of the gods, nagas, and yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Lai ke dan le dan no jin ke drubon da da mi ke nan dan dro wa gunji da nan jit sampa tam che ke du da gi chu ten to. Okay, and with that, now we have all sentient beings here with us. Imagine that they're your guests. You've called upon them to be able to hear this Dharma. Rejoice in the fact that you're thinking of others. Usually in our lives, we think of only a few. Now we're thinking of everyone. This is a total difference in the way that we've normally behaved. Rejoice in the fact that you're letting your mind feel a sense of lightness that will occur, and it will become lighter and lighter and lighter the more you dispose of these conceptions of bifurcation, these conceptions of us versus them. Your mind will become lighter and lighter and lighter. But it won't just happen because you heard me once a week. It will happen because you get up in the morning and you recognize you have this human basis that's so incredible, and that you should do something with it because you're going to die. And when you die, you don't know if you're going to have this chance again for a while, or maybe you'll have it in your next life. You could take your chances. But chances are, if you haven't really, really ripened your mind in this life, you won't be ready to die, and you will not have a next life that's going to have these opportunities. We have to really make sure that when that window of opportunity is there, if we aren't already enlightened, that we have an ability to kind of know, because of our familiarization with this stuff, that at that moment when the appearances start to disappear, we'll be totally ready for it because we'll have practiced and we'll have been engaging in things that tell us these appearances are going to disappear, so we're not surprised when they do. And so if we're not surprised as appearances are disappearing, if we're not surprised as these appearances are disappearing, then we'll have a window in there that we can actually work with, we can actually do something with. But if we're craving everything that we have around us and hoping that it won't disappear, we haven't practiced the Dharma enough to even get rid of that first kind of idea, grasping at things as impermanent, that are this ignorance that grasps at things as being permanent when they're really impermanent. There's so many abandonments that we have to look, things we have to abandon within our mind. It's just not one or two. The self-grasping ignorance is definitely the root of all of our problems. But if we don't get some of this other stuff out of the way, if we don't get this other stuff thinking that pain is pleasure, suffering is pleasure, if we don't get this out of the way where we think that impermanent things are permanent, that dirty things are clean, we don't get this kind of wrong idea out of our head, we'll never get to the idea that things don't inherently exist. If we don't practice, if we don't get some of these kind of coarse, gross things out of the way in our mind, we'll never, ever be able to understand what we need to understand to cut the root of cyclic existence. And we won't engage in ripening paths. It won't mean enough to us. If we don't practice every day, this stuff won't mean enough to us. It'll come and go out of our lives, but it won't mean enough to us. But if we practice every day for a few months, you won't be able to not practice. If you practice in a very, very systematic way, you won't not want to practice. A lot of times you don't want to practice because you go in these bursts, or I go in these bursts. Luckily, it's been a while since I've kind of fooled myself with bursts. But we go through these bursts and then we get bored with the Dharma and we feel like we need a vacation and go do all this other stuff and then make our way back to it. And we aren't any further along than we were when we started. Rinpoche always said it's like a river that's flowing gently. Umzala Geshe Aga just said to me, it's like a river that's flowing gently. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be not a half a day, the whole day, but not, oh my gosh, the whole day. Just like a river that isn't stopping. Our practice should not stop. Our practice should always be going. We should always be able to try to have a conscientiousness within our daily life that allows for us to know whether or not we're doing what we told our minds to do. If we care, if we want to be happy in the future, we've told our minds not to engage in non-virtues. And if we don't have conscientiousness throughout our day, we won't know if we are engaging in them or not. And if we haven't calmed our minds down enough and we haven't really studied enough to know what to look for, and we haven't accumulated enough merit to have some obstacles removed that will help us find what we're looking for, then we're not going to have sustainability. So it's really important for us to do this, even if it's 5 minutes a day. That's better than doing it an hour a week or something. I don't know the math on that. I just made that up. But I'm just saying, like, consistency is so, so important, because you don't know what day you're going to die. And if you take your day off and have your vacay day, maybe that's the day you die. Maybe you're just so addicted to your vacay day that you're going to die on your vacay day, and you're going to say, don't let me leave my vacay day. And you won't be ready to practice Dharma. That's why it says if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. It's not a judgment. It's just a statement to tell you the truth about that. If you think that this life is all that matters and you just engage in the play of this life day and night, that isn't religious practice. People can say, and they love this, that I integrate my Dharma practice into my tomfoolery. I used to say things like this, like into my, I play my rock music. No, I would not be conscientious, mindful, and have introspection. Right now, if you turn on some of my favorite hip hop, my conscientiousness, my mindfulness, and my vigilance or introspection will be gone for as long as that thing is, especially if it's loud and it feels it. I feel it. It'll all go away. And all I have is the moment I have right now. And Gontang Dembe Drome says, we're trying to figure out how to put a virtuous imprint in each of those moments. Can we spare any? We're moving so quickly towards death. Can we spare any moments? And if we haven't realized that impermanent things aren't permanent, and we grasp at things as being permanent that are impermanent, then we aren't going to put virtuous imprints in every moment, because we'll think we have time to do it later. And this is what I've come to learn. And that after watching Rinpoche for so many years, and then for maybe half of that time trying to run around and chase things that weren't what Rinpoche went after, and finding that my result didn't tally, wasn't like his, I stopped punching mirrors. And I try on a daily basis to do a little bit better, because left to my own devices, left to my things that I think are fun and happy, I will waste a lot of time. So now all sentient beings are here. We're not wasting time. We're doing what matters. We're listening to a Dharma for the teachings for beings of 3 capacities, the teachings for shared in common with beings of small capacity that show us how to get out of the lower realms of cyclic existence, how to achieve a higher realm rebirth. The teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity that show us how to achieve freedom from samsara. And the teachings for beings of great capacity that show us how to be complete Buddhas. And I say small and medium are shared in common with, because in the kind of, when we're looking at it as an integrated path, these are all practices that one will have to have realized in order to get to the great vehicle, the small and medium practices. So they're shared in common with. But there are individual practitioners who don't give a darn about the next level. And they would just be a small scope practitioner if they don't give a darn about anything besides going to the higher realms, or the medium level if they don't give a darn about achieving Buddhahood. They just want an individual liberation and abiding nirvana. Or the great scope. As soon as you get there, you have to say shared in common, because you have to practice all of those practices that are in the small and medium scope to achieve the entrance to the Mahayana. It's just the way it is. There's no way around it, unfortunately. There isn't a shortcut. You wouldn't even, the greatest result that there exists in the universe, trying to achieve that result, why would you ever think that that could just be easy? Getting a small result in samsara takes this work and that work, and I have to cross this T and dot that I. Why would you ever think that you could just hear a few things about, the nature of reality, of which you've known not enough about that your understanding tallies with actual reality? Since beginningless time, you've been mistaken about this. You've been so tangled up in misunderstanding, and you've tangled your mind in so many ways with inappropriate attention around the misunderstanding, how could you ever expect that that misunderstanding could just go away because you heard one or two things? This is something that's ingrained in us. This is something that you will only see the loosening of in a real way if you on a daily basis start to look at, am I one with my parts? Am I separate than my parts? If I'm not one with my parts intrinsically or separate from my parts intrinsically, then I can't intrinsically exist, because intrinsic existence has to be findable. And if intrinsic existence of Jeff were to be findable, I'd have to be able to find him in my aggregates, my parts, my body and my mind, or something outside of that. And if I can't find an intrinsically existent I, me, Jeff, in my aggregates, in my parts, or outside of my parts, there's not an intrinsically existent Jeff there. But then when that non-finding occurs and you come out of that ultimate analysis, there is a finding of a Jeff. So the entailment of emptiness is that if things aren't intrinsically one with or separate from their parts, they don't intrinsically exist. But there's a Jeff that's talking to you now. So if the Jeff doesn't intrinsically exist objectively right within the object, right within this thing here, there must be, because Jeff is talking to you, another mode of existence. And this is what the Heart Sutra is talking about. The actual mode of existence of reality, of things, the actual mode of existence of microphones, books, and giraffes, the actual mode of existence. So now let's imagine that, because we're about to read the Heart Sutra, we have all sentient beings here as our guests. Let's imagine that the merit field begins to file in the space in front of us. We see Buddha Shakyamuni, we see His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we see Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, we see Demolocha Rinpoche, Khensur Lobsang Gyatso, we see Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, we see Geshe Dorje Damdu Rinpoche, Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche, Jeffrey Hopkins, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, any being you consider an enlightened being, all of these holy beings starting to fill in the space in front of you. Imagine the beings from the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya, to masters like Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha and Lama Salimpa and the Lord Atisha and Master Drontompa, now the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna, and the masters like Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Baba Vega and Jnana Garbha and Chandrarashita and Kamala Shila, all of these holy beings, imagining Lama Salimpa, again, Lord Atisha and Master Drontompa. All of these holy beings are here to teach us about grounds and paths and the Vinaya, and then the emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena. All of these lineages were combined by Lord Atisha in order for us to really realize each and every single thing that we need along the path. We're so fortunate. The lineage of blessings passed down from Lord Vajradhara to Matripa, to masters like Matripa and Tilopa and Naropa and Losawa Marpa and Jetsun Milarepa and Jay Gampopa. Imagining Drontompa, Master Drontompa, the incredible Upasaka, the lay person, is passing the Lam Rim lineage down to the three old Kadampa lineages, the great beings of the Nyingma, Padmasambhava, Longchenpa, Mipam, Jay Mipam, imagining beings of the Sakya tradition, Sakya Kunganipo, Sakya Randawa, Sakya Pandita, all of these holy beings, the holy beings of the Kaju tradition, like Karmapa, Jay Gampopa, Milarepa, all of these holy beings. Imagine the beings of the Galupa lineage, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtap Jain, Jelsop Jay, Basuchuji Jetson, Panchen Sonandrapa, Jayan Sheba, Purbajo, Jetsumpa, Gonchu Jimmy Wambo, Janja Rupi Dorje, the first Dalai Lama, the third Dalai Lama, the fifth Dalai Lama, the seventh Dalai Lama, all of these holy beings that we're so connected to because we have their texts either in our libraries or they've been taught to us. And especially if we've read the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we've been blessed by all of these holy enlightened masters. Imagine the beings of the highest yoga tantra deities, performance tantra deities, action tantra deities, all of the 35 Buddhas, all of the Dharma protectors are right here in the space in front of us. And now imagine that the scene of all of these holy beings turns into Rajagriha of Vulture Peak Mountain, where the Heart Sutra, the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, was explained. The definitive teaching among the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. The first turning of the wheel of Dharma is considered an interpretable teaching by the Madhyamaka Prasangika. The third turning of the wheel of Dharma is considered an interpretable teaching by the Madhyamaka Prasangika. It's the second wheel of Dharma, second turning of the wheel of Dharma, that we consider the definitive teaching. Why is it definitive? Because it teaches the nature of reality. It doesn't have to be taken at face value. It just has to teach the nature of reality, the ultimate truth directly. And this Heart Sutra, the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, are teachings that teach the ultimate truth directly. And then hidden within it, we find the teachings, which are the 5 paths, the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. Hidden within this. Those are bodhisattva paths that everyone will have to traverse. Once you enter the Mahayana at the path of accumulation, everyone will have to traverse to eventually get to the path of no more learning. And when we look at the Heart Sutra mantra, hidden within it are these 5 paths. So we say Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. So it says Teata Om Gate. The first Gate hides within it the path of accumulation. And then also there we can see that a sharp bodhisattva would see the emptiness of inherent existence of the path of accumulation. The second Gate, Teata Om Gate Gate, stands for the path of preparation. A bodhisattva of sharp capacity would see not only hidden within this the path of preparation, but also the emptiness of inherent existence of the path of preparation. The third Paragate stands for the path of seeing. Here, the path of seeing is empty of inherent existence. So hidden within this, the bodhisattva would be able to read all of this into this. A bodhisattva of sharp capacity could see just this mantra. And even the sharpest person could see just the letter Ah. Another story, but a very sharp person in this mantra could see all of the paths and also the emptiness of inherent existence, the conventional and ultimate, the ripening and liberating paths are all contained secretly within this mantra. Not in a tantric sense. This is a sutra mantra. There are sutra mantras also, just for your, so you know. The Heart Sutra is not a tantra. It's a sutra teaching. And sometimes people think it's a tantra and that this is a tantric mantra, and that's not correct. So it's important to know. So the third Paragate stands for the path of seeing. Parasamgate stands for the path of meditation. And the sharp bodhisattva, of course, understands that hidden within this Parasamgate is the path of meditation, and that the path of meditation is empty of inherent existence. And then Bodhisoha stands for the path of no more learning. And the Buddha, of course, knows. No more learning means there's nothing more to learn. You know everything. You're omniscient. In the case of the Mahayana 5 paths. So the Buddha is always engaged in simultaneous ascertainment of conventional and ultimate truth. And it's the only being in the universe who can simultaneously cognize both conventional and ultimate truth. So with all of that mouthful of stuff being said, I hope each week you look at more and more of these texts. You go to Uma-Tibet.org and start to look at the various texts within the Chandrakirti categories and with Jayan Sheba's tenet systems, and start to be able to look at these. Just kind of read through them, check them out. Look at the easier books like Cutting Through Appearances, where we have Gonpo Jimmy Wambo's Precious Garland of Tenets. Look through books like Mind in Tibetan Buddhism by Elizabeth Napper and Lati Rinpoche, where you start to understand what is mind and its functions, how does mind work? And if you can start to get a basis of understanding of how mind works, and then how it's clear in knowing, and how it validly cognizes things, and how things are mistaken, and how things are deceptive, and then you can start to understand the staircase of tenets where you see the selflessness that grows bigger and bigger and bigger. It starts out close to what worldly people would think about and ends up at what the Heart Sutra is talking about. And if you don't study the tenet systems, you won't be able to remove the rocks kind of out of the way that need to be removed to get to that final view of the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. If you don't understand the Vaibhashika's view of the emptiness of a permanent, unitary, independent self, you won't be able to get to the lack of inherent existence. If you don't understand the Sautrantika's view of the selflessness of autonomous substantial reality, you won't be able to get to the emptiness of inherent existence. If you don't start to understand the emptiness of externality as presented in the Chittamantra system, you won't be able to start to see how externality isn't what you think it's cracked up to be, and subjectivity is how things operate. If you don't start to understand the lack of true existence without negating inherent existence, you'll never be able to get to the lack of inherent existence. Without understanding how things depend on the mind to originate, but they don't depend on the object at all. But you have to get to a point where you move closer and closer to things not depending on the object at all and not be a nihilist. So to get to the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena as presented in the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, you're going to need the Madhyamaka Svatantrika view, the middle way autonomy view, where I said that there's this kind of relationship where it's coming into being through the power of the mind and the object appearing to the mind. And eventually you need to shuck off due to the object, because the object doesn't have any power for Prasangika. But so do you see how you go through the staircase of understanding of selflessness that starts at selflessness of a permanent, unitary, independent self and ends up at the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena? It ends up at the view in the Heart Sutra, but you won't get to the view in the Heart Sutra if you don't look at the stages of understanding of the kind of objects of negation before the final object of negation. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. And just so you know, the five skandhas encompass all impermanent phenomena, impermanent phenomena we can come up with, the five skandhas. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no ignorant, end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. You can't, once you become a Buddha, there's nowhere further to go. It's unsurpassable. There's no next spot. It's the final destination, but it's empty of inherent existence. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhi soha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son or noble family, thus it is, O son or noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas were rejoiced. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Aga samara jasara samara ya ve te ata ongate gate paragate parasangate bodhiso baba goje sanji gai dembe doji je loba doji meba doji shewa doji jagi baji meto beje tanji shinten koye soha Getting done, Jaji, Juji, Wadang, Midon, Nube, Jandandra, Wadang, Don't bother, Nimbon, Zonji, Daji, De Jandanda, De Lejo. Mandala offering is a request for the teaching, thinking about the entire lineage, going back to the Buddha that we're blessed by, and offering him a perfect universe with perfectly happy beings. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds and knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I accumulate by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the virtue I accumulate by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to abandon all views. To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. If you are attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And that's from Sachen Kunga Nipo's parting from the four attachments. And we find within that renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. And we find within it even the small scope if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. So, hey, how are y'all? So great to be here with you. As always, talking about this beautiful topic of the Lam Rim that Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche was so kind to come and teach us about, so kind to say, understand there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. And then that stanza that Rinpoche brought with him to share with us became his teaching, basically, for the next 20 some odd years. And I know that many of you were there to hear so many of those teachings, and I just rejoice in the fact that we were able to even stand in the same room with a being who had so much wisdom and so much love and compassion that was so different than everyone else, and was so different in a way that it was almost like unimaginable to think that a human being could be like that, could be so good. And it's really given me my life's work. It's really given me my life's goal, not to become the smartest, not to become the this or the that, to become someone who has a mind like my teacher, like Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, someone who has a mind like Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, or Geshe Dorje Damdu Rinpoche, or Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche. And the only way my mind can be like theirs is if I engage in the practices that they've engaged in to make their minds like their minds became, not by sitting next to them, by engaging in the practices that they engaged in. They didn't get to where they are by sitting next to someone holy. They got to where they are by sitting next to someone holy and studying the Dharma and practicing the Dharma that holy being taught. We have to do the same thing. We're no different. We think to ourselves because we're Westerners, perhaps, or we have a different kind of situation that we can't really achieve these realizations like these people. We're not a Geshe, we're not a Kempos, we're not any of these kind of fancy terms that we think are the requirement to have realizations. But that's just our self-cherishing attitude. That's just our ignorance screaming in our ears so that we don't listen. Because if we listen, we'll recognize that we have Buddha nature. All sentient beings have Buddha nature. We have proliferating Buddha nature, and we have a natural Buddha nature. We have this. We have a mind that can proliferate, a mind that isn't stuck because it's empty of inherent existence. We have good qualities that we can mature. We've seen this in our lives. We've seen ignorance that can be dispelled. We had the ignorance of the alphabet, ignorance of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then we learned the alphabet, and we got rid of the ignorance related to the alphabet. So we know we can get rid of ignorance. We know that we can increase our good qualities by engaging in kind of practice practices that make them better. Engaging in our studies, we can learn something and dispel ignorance related to a topic. Likewise, we have ignorance about how the mode of existence of all phenomena. So we have to learn about what that ignorance is. What are we ignorant about? What would the mode of existence be like if we were looking at it correctly? How would we become a being whose mind tallies with reality if our mind doesn't tally with reality at all? These questions can only be answered with the answers that are to be realized if you've engaged in the wisdom arisen from hearing, analysis, and then meditation. It doesn't just go, you heard a little something and now you're a great yogi, you're a great meditator. I'm sorry. There's a lot of instructions that say you can just have some simple thing that can be told to you and you'll realize it. I hope you're one of the 1 in 100 billion people. You notice there's only 8 billion on the earth that are the kind of beings that have the potential to have just something told to them and they realize reality. If you think you're among those very, very special type of beings, then go ahead and try that. But if you're doing that over and over and over again, and you're not finding that your ability to handle your emotions isn't getting better, then it's probably not working. Because if you don't really work on that which gives rise to inappropriate attention, afflictions, and contaminated karmas, it's just going to be maybe a little suppression here and there, a little bliss here and there, almost like taking drugs. And that's not going to get you to know the nature of reality, because you can bliss out, because you can feel good, because something you're doing, it just feels great. Don't forget that happy feelings are the suffering of change. So don't seek out, this thing makes me feel so happy. Make sure this thing makes me feel so much more wise. This thing makes me more in control of my mind. This thing makes me more able to engage in positive actions of my body and my speech. And I'm the one who knows my mind. That's where the Bodhisattva and Tantric vows come in. I'm the one who knows them. Is my mind more apt to be like that of a Bodhisattva's mind or not? That's just the question at the end of the day. And if it's not, it's because I haven't created the causes for it to occur. And I may feel like I'm really special and compassionate for a week or two sometimes because I'm riding on some kind of endorphin high or something, or I've had the right combination of coffee. But if I haven't created the causes that are necessary in order to have the ripening mind occur of compassion, or forget bodhicitta, if we don't have compassion, if I haven't created those causes, they won't occur. So the Lam Rim teaches us exactly what we need to do to create those causes. So let's read through the source of all my good, and then we'll take kind of pick up where we left off last week. We're now at the Mahayana, the teachings for beings of great capacity. We're learning about bodhicitta. We're in the section on aspiring bodhicitta. We know there's two kinds of bodhicitta: aspiring bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. Aspiring bodhicitta, once you have your first moment of aspiring bodhicitta, you reach the Mahayana path of accumulation. Aspiring bodhicitta occurs through practices of the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna, and the practices of the 7-point cause and effect passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Asanga. And those two practices can also be combined. This is how you get aspiring bodhicitta. But at the steps before, both of those fancy, beautiful practices we're so lucky to have in our lives require us to know the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacities. So as we read this, just recognize that everything up to, I've slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life is necessary for you to generate this wish to free all sentient beings who've been your mother. You have to know that what this samsara is about, the drawbacks and the negativities and why it's no good. If you think that you're going to then turn to others and figure out, want them to be free from something. It's not just simple things that you want them to be free from. You need to know what the three types of suffering, the suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and especially the pervasive compounded suffering, because that is really the truth of suffering that the Buddha pointed out and wanted to emphasize the most. this lack of independence, forced into a set of contaminated aggregates by contaminated karmas and afflictions and corresponding active seeds driven by self-grasping ignorance. Without all of these kind of factors, this like, I've slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life, that's an actual realization you've achieved through the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. You see, Lama Tsongkhapa makes a statement there. That's a realization that's occurred that then can turn into compassion, that can then turn into bodhicitta. Does that make sense? So the source of all my good reads, and Pabonka Rinpoche says 4 categories, how to find a lama and serve and et cetera, that teacher, and then the second category. So that's the first stanza. Second category, what you've done, what you do once you've found a teacher. That's the second stanza all the way up to the 12th stanza. And then prayers that you have every obstacle removed, and that, your Dharma friends are always with you, and you don't have any kind of negativities. So there's a supplication for that to occur. Pabonka says in stanza 13, and then stanza 14 is a supplication that all your lives you're never separated from the perfect Lama that you've recognized in the first stanza as the source of all your good and the foundation of everything that you need in all lives. So you make a prayer to never be separated from a Lama, and you want to be able to fulfill every good quality of every stage, every path, and reach then the place where you're Vajradhara. That's the aspiration. This prayer is saying, can I go from where I am to maybe not even having a teacher to becoming Vajradhara, to becoming Buddha? That's a long kind of road when you look at it, but it's a lot shorter if you know the directions. The source of all my good, this precious treasure we have in our lives, I beg you all, please utilize this information as an instruction for practice, not as an information to add in to other information you have. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him or her in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him or her with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that this excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They can't be trusted. They're the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teaching. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. So everything that leads up to that sentence, that realization, occurs because you've realized the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and you realize that you yourself have slipped and fallen into the sea of a suffering life, the suffering of change, the suffering of suffering, pervasive compounded suffering. In this desire realm where we all are, if you're who you appear to be, we have all of them. So I've slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. And now I turn to others and I see every single sentient being, everyone who's my own mother, when I do the meditations we'll talk about in the coming days, everyone my own mother has fallen into. Grant me then to practice a wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, as it says in Lord Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara. The wish for enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings is how it's defined. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I'm not well trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, and the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well the paths shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then always to keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times, highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me now that could stop me now, stop and end forever. And all my lives may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path and reach then quickly the place where I become myself the one who holds the diamond. It never ever ceases to amaze me when I read that, and I just start hearing all of the categories fill in from Rinpoche's teachings and from looking at the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment and the medium stages of the path to enlightenment and the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, and the words of Manjushri and all of these incredible commentaries that we have. We're so fortunate to have Essence of Refined Gold, all of these texts where we can learn more, and all the Panchen Lama's texts. I could just keep going on and on and on. How lucky are we? We have these things in English. We can study them. It's not a mystery. We know A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We know how to read. And if we don't, we can aren't able to read, we can have a book on tape. We just have so much at our fingertips and at our disposal as a sentient being. That's so many sentient beings in the universe. Think about hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods. Think about how many of them don't have any Dharma at their fingertips. We're so fortunate. So this is the kind of thinking that gets us to make our compassion start to become alive. To recognize that others don't have the same opportunity that we have. Others are acting out in ways that are nuts, just like we act out in ways that are nuts, and they have no idea how to stop it. They only know how to make more nuts happen. And more nuts, just more crazy, more bad behavior, just creates horrible suffering circumstances in the future. We maybe are a little off, but at least we know how to fix it. So many beings in the universe don't know how to fix it. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, every one my own mother, has fallen into. And in order for me to invoke this idea, everyone my own mother has fallen into, what do you think we need? We need a non-biased attitude that we've talked about over and over again. And we'll look at it more in depth when we do the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. But Lama Tsongkhapa, in the beginning of the Great Vehicle section, after showing us that the door to the Mahayana, the entrance to the Mahayana, is bodhicitta, and we know that in order to become a Buddha, you have to engage in the perfection vehicle and the Vajra vehicle. Both of those are Mahayana vehicles, but both of those are Mahayana, fall into the category of Mahayana. So if we don't enter into the car that goes to Buddhahood, we won't be able to drive there, if that makes sense. Oh, the door to the Mahayana, the door to that which gives you a direct shot to Buddhahood, the only one, the door to get in that door, to enter that car door, the entrance is this kind of small entrance called the mind that aspires to enlightenment, bodhicitta. And in order for bodhicitta to happen, you have to have compassion. And we learned last week that compassion, according to Chandrakirti, is important in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we read out of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment a little bit of an extended explanation of that. But I think it's really important to understand how important compassion is. And when you understand how important compassion is, you'll see that the object is everyone, and you'll see that these biased attitudes that you have block you from having actual great compassion. Block you from that which can give rise to the only thing that can take you to Buddhahood, the entrance to the Mahayana, bodhicitta. The only car that can get you to, there was only one kind of car that could drive you from where you are to New York City, only one kind of car, and you needed a special key to get into that car, then you would need that key to be able to get to New York. Likewise, to get into bodhicitta, you need the key of compassion. And then to get in the car that goes to Buddhahood, you need bodhicitta, if that makes any sense. So I just came up with that analogy. If it helps you, awesome. If it doesn't, throw it out. How compassion is the root. The root. So compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, the water that nourishes, and the fruit that is long a source of enjoyment. So I will praise compassion at the start of it all. So here, let's read from Lama Tsongkhapa's Illuminating the Intent, this beautiful, incredible text. I cannot believe this exists in the world. I couldn't believe Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment came to exist in our world when Khensur Geshe Wangdak was teaching it some years ago. And now I just can't believe that we have this book in our world, Illuminating the Intent, because of the kindness of Geshe Thupten Jinpa, PhD. We're so fortunate that we have these books to be able to, change our minds with. So let's read a little bit about what Lama Tsongkhapa has to say about this. So the Illuminating the Intent is a commentary on Chandrakirti's entrance or supplement, as Jeffrey Hopkins translates it, to the middle. Entrance to the middle or supplement to the middle. Sometimes middle way. I don't use way anymore. Taken way out because it's not a necessary word. It's just middle. Entrance to the middle. Supplement to the middle. Way is okay too. It's just what I'm choosing now to use as a translation because Jeffrey Hopkins made a very good case for it. Professor Gennenden Jambal Drapala. So since compassion is the root of the awakening mind, so we're going to read from this. Okay, so let me go back. Let me just slow down the car for a second. So Illuminating the Intent is a commentary by Lama Tsongkhapa on Chandrakirti's entrance or supplement to the middle. Chandrakirti's entrance or supplement to the middle is a commentary on Nagarjuna's Mulya Madhyamika Karika, the root wisdom text, the fundamental treatise on the middle. So when we see in Chandrakirti's text supplement to the middle, that word middle in the context of that title is referring to the root wisdom text, the Mulya Madhyamika Karika. So this is a entrance to the middle or a supplement to the middle because Chandrakirti adds things to make us understand the Madhyamika Avatara more. So it's called supplement at times, and then also entrance, depending on the translation. So this is Tsongkhapa's commentary on Chandrakirti's text. Chandrakirti's text is a commentary on Nagarjuna's text. Nagarjuna's text, fundamental treatise on the middle. Chandrakirti's text, entrance to the middle or supplement to the middle. Lama Tsongkhapa's text, commentary on both of those, if you will, is called Illuminating the Intent or Illuminating the Thought, depending on who translates the wording. So if you see illuminating the thought, that just means illuminating the intent. It can be umagumbarapsel. So it can be translated in those different ways. So just chill when you see different translations. It's just everybody trying to get us to see emptiness and have a ripening path of bodhicitta while we're doing it. Sitting there sleeping while we're seeing emptiness. Okay, so since compassion is the root, so let's read the stanza, and then this is the commentary on it. We'll go for another 10 minutes. As compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, the water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is a long source of enjoyment, I will praise it at the start of all. So Chandrakirti chooses to praise compassion, and we look at His Holiness always gives the teaching that all religions have at their root compassion. So we can say that this mind that's so important, everybody kind of agrees upon that's important, and Chandrakirti pays homage to it right in the beginning. Since compassion is the root of the awakening mind and of non-dual awareness as well, Chandrakirti wrote as, this is the stanza, so wrote this stanza, and so with the intention of showing how compassion is primary among these three factors. As compassion alone is crucially important in the beginning to help produce the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, it is like the seed. To nourish the plant to ever higher states, in the middle it is like water. Finally, as a source of enjoyment by trainees for a long time, it is accepted as resembling the ripened fruit. Therefore, I, Chandrakirti, will praise compassion as opposed to Shravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, Bodhisattvas, or the other two causes at the start of composing this treatise. So Chandrakirti finds it as is important. And the ripening of sentient beings, once you're a Buddha, this going out to ripen sentient beings is caused by the great compassion you generated on the Bodhisattva path. That great compassion is still there that has as the object of observation all sentient beings, but now you're omniscient and you have perfect caring for others, and you're just automatically just sending bodies out and stuff to help them. And it's in the end, when you're already a Buddha, that this compassion becomes just so important throughout. It is not that compassion is praised at some later point in the text. It is praised here itself by simply showing how it is important at the beginning as well as the end and in the middle when it comes to producing the fruit of a conqueror. The exclusionary modifier alone indicates that unlike in the analogy of an external crop, where what is crucial in the beginning, at the end, and in the middle are different, in the context here, compassion alone is crucial for the crop of a conqueror at the beginning and at the end, as well as in the middle. Here is how. Okay, so there's a shorter amount here than in the Great Treatise, so I wanted to share both of these with you because they both have just gems within inside it. Here is how. Like the seed, compassion is crucial at the beginning. Those with great compassion feel pain at the suffering of other sentient beings. How would you know what pain was? Pain's not just headaches and hard stuff like that. Pain is the happy feelings. Let me repeat. Pain, suffering is happy feeling, is a happy feeling. Suffering of change is referring to happy feelings, contaminated feelings. And any happiness in samsara is contaminated happiness. So it's necessarily the suffering of change. When we look at the ones we're talking about anyway, neutral states are even contaminated. So anyway, we feel pain at the suffering of other sentient beings. So to help protect all suffering-ridden sentient beings, they generate the mind directed toward their welfare and contemplate, I will rescue all these sentient beings from suffering and definitely join them to Buddhahood. You can't possibly have a thought like that if you have a bias. You can't possibly have a thought like that if you haven't generated great compassion that has as its object of all sentient beings and a wish that they all are free from suffering and the causes of suffering. All, not some, not the ones you like, not the ones on your team, all. I will rescue these sentient beings from suffering and definitely join them to Buddhahood. I will rescue that person that I detest, I see on TV. I'll rescue them. This is what you're supposed to feel like a mother does for her only child about everyone. You see, even on the news, when someone does something horrible, they interview, the mother sometimes, and they say, he was such a good boy. Just want to care for all sentient beings and look after a being, chasing beings around to help them, just like a mother runs after a little child to try to help them and make sure they're safe. It says that in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment. If you look it up, I bet we'll read it in a few weeks. Since seeing that this is dependent on attaining Buddhahood themselves, they generate the mind focused on the awakening with the thought, I will, by all possible means, attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So you generate altruism from great compassion that says, I'll rescue everyone, but you recognize you can't rescue everyone if you aren't a Buddha, because you haven't even, you're not rescued. You're like laying there with all your bones broken next to someone laying there with all their bones broken, go, I'm going to rescue you. So you got to have a unbroken body to rescue. You have to have an unbroken mind to rescue. You have to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience to be able to know everything, to know how to rescue. Recognizing that such a pledge cannot be fulfilled if one forsakes the altruistic deeds, including non-dual wisdom, perfection of generosity, and so on, they then definitely engage in the practice of all the deeds, including especially the cultivation of gnosis or wisdom. Therefore, great compassion is the seed of all the attributes of the Buddha. With this understanding, the precious Garland states, in the scriptures of the great vehicle in which are taught all the practices, stainless wisdom, and so on, preceded by compassion, what sane person would deride these such teachings? So it shows how great compassion kind of aids you in generating this arriving at an understanding of emptiness, of non-dual nature, of non-dual wisdom, non-dual of subject and object wisdom, where it's like water being poured into water, and the emptiness of your mind, the object and the subject, your mind and the emptiness of your mind become one taste, like water and water, clean water and clean water. Because your mind is clear and knowing. Your mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. The emptiness of that mind, it becomes one taste. And the way you get to that is by wanting to get to that. Why would you want to get to that? Well, if you're wanting to get a lesser abiding nirvana, if you're wanting to get to that, then you would need a renunciation driving it to give you the energy to keep studying and keep studying and keep studying and keep studying. So the renunciation in that case of the medium scope person helps them with their emptiness. Same thing's true, but it's even more forceful because the bodhisattva's great compassion sees everyone suffering around them and knows that he or she has to realize emptiness in order to really help. Wow. The stanza above states, so the stanza from the Precious Garland, in the scriptures of the great vehicle in which are taught all the practices, stainless wisdom, and so on, preceded by compassion, what sane person would deride such teachings? The stanza above states how all the essential points of the Mahayana are encompassed within the three practices: the awakening mind preceded by compassion, the bodhisattva deeds in general, which are brought forth by the awakening mind, and particularly the practice of wisdom free from the stain of objectification in terms of the two extremes, the extreme of absolutism and nihilism. We have to be right in the middle. And neither of those things exist, so the middle is a huge place. We learned that from Professor Jeffrey Hopkins. Here is how, like compassion, here is how, like water, compassion is crucial in the middle. It's only a couple more paragraphs. Even if the seed of compassion produces the sprout of the awakening mind at the beginning, so you become a bodhisattva, if it is not repeatedly moistened with the water of compassion, later on one will fail to gather the vast twofold collections that are the cause for the fruit of Buddhahood. One will definitely actualize the nirvana of a Shravaka or Prachika Buddha instead. So you'll fall from the Mahayana to the Hinayana if you don't have this great compassion in the middle. After you've generated bodhicitta, if you become discouraged, like Shariputra, for instance, you become discouraged, you can lose your bodhicitta at a certain level. So it's important to keep this water present, nurturing it, the great compassion present, nurturing it. Or you'll lose your bodhicitta, and then your realizations will lead you to an abiding nirvana, to a Hinayana realization, and you won't have completed your own needs, let alone all sentient beings' needs. If, however, it is repeatedly moistened with the water of compassion, one will not end up in that situation. Wow, so this thing we're studying, a bodhisattva's got to stay on their game with and have conscientiousness and introspection and mindfulness around. The bodhisattvas find this important. Shouldn't you? Shouldn't I? Here's how, like the ripened fruit, compassion is also crucial at the end. Even if one attains the conqueror state, if one lacks the ripened fruit of compassion, perfect compassion, one will not become a resource that sustains other sentient beings. If you don't have perfect compassion, you won't just send bodies to everyone. The proliferation of the uninterrupted lineages of Aryas, Shravakas, Arya Prachika Buddhas, and Arya Bodhisattvas, one following another in a continuous lineage, will also not come about. If compassion is perpetually present on the resultant ground, only the contrary situation will come about. The contrary situation is that you'll have a resource that can sustain other sentient beings. You'll have the ripened fruit of compassion that helps sustain others. That's the contrary situation. Therefore, through explicating the meaning of these 4 lines, that as compassion alone is accepted to be, we'll go back and read it. As compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, the water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is long a source of enjoyment, I will praise compassion at the start of it all. Therefore, through the meaning of the, so Lama Tsongkhapa in here just quotes one line of that, so I just read the whole 4 stanzas. He reads the first line. He says the 4 lines, reads the first line and says, and so on. We should gain a firm conviction that these lines demonstrate the following. If I aspire to follow the great vehicle, I must first become moved by the power of compassion. And on that basis, I must generate then the awakening mind from the depth of my heart. Having generated such a mind, I must without doubt engage in the bodhisattva deeds in general and in particular, penetrate the depth of the profound view of emptiness. In this way, I must train in these. And this is Lama Tsongkhapa talking. He's not saying, it's not just some whoever, I must do this. This is Lama Tsongkhapa saying, I must train in these. I must penetrate the depth of the profound view of emptiness. We are fortunate, folks. I hope you know it. I really hope you know it. I know some of you do. I know some of you do. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you all for listening to me week after week. I appreciate that. It helps me to kind of make my mind move more towards the things that I want my mind to move towards. And I know that we all have these different affinities and we have all these varieties of ways of thinking that are so different, and your mind doesn't work exactly like my mind. But the cure for the problem we all have is the same cure, and that's realizing the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena while we're a bodhisattva. And I say while we're a bodhisattva, meaning that may we not waste time and go right to the Mahayana path with the foundation of the small and medium scope. Go right to the Mahayana path. Realize that we're working on the small and medium scope in an uncommon way because we are on a pathway that's one vehicle to the Buddhahood. Then we're just trying as hard as we can to enter that car door, to have the key of great compassion that allows us to open the door and enter the door into the car that gets us to Buddhahood. That only door is bodhicitta. And may we, week after week, get closer to that independence upon these teachings. So concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. So if your mind is anything like mine, the point that I was making before is that our minds are all so diverse. And if your mind is I know your minds are different than mine, but the solution's the same. And if any of the practices that I do to try to ripen my mind or engage in the kind of ripening paths to try to move the rocks out of the way to get to the realization of emptiness, if any of those things can help you too, I really rejoice. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular the essential teachings of Venerable Lobsang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva. I didn't intentionally make any or know of any that I made, but I am a sentient being and not in an ordinary one at that, who engages in all life at all times through conception. and conceptuality is always mistaken. So I could very easily have made a mistake, being that the way I perceive everything is mistaken. Why couldn't I mix something else up? Om benza sata samaya manubalaya benza sata zeno bajisa deda me baba zudogaya me baba zubogaya me baba anurada me baba zavasidi me prayata zava kamazuja me kitanji angoro home ha 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 ho baga banza vatata kata benza mame moga benza baba maha samaya zava ha om hey. May we always be protected by Palden Lama, the wrathful emanation of Tara, who Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche said was our protector. Jorama, Jorama, Jojorama, Tujakala Raja Moromo, Achadacha Tunjora the Rilla Hung Jo. Oh. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. And then we'll read the prayer of the Bodhicitta prayer. May the supreme bodhicitta that has not, the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase forevermore. And for anybody who doesn't know, that prayer encompasses the entire Shantideva Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. You can see the teaching by Zapatru Rinpoche that he gives to Kuna Lama, and the Kuna Lama gives to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the first 3 chapters fall under the category of may the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. The next 3 chapters go over that which has arisen, not diminish, but increase forevermore. And then the next 3 chapters, I'm sorry, that which has not, that which has arisen, not diminish, are the next 3 chapters. I'll just do the whole thing the right way instead of giving you like a half a story. So may the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. So that encompasses the benefits of the awakening mind, disclosure of evil, and full acceptance of the awakening mind. That which has arisen, not diminish, encompasses conscientiousness, guarding alertness or introspection, and patience. That which has arisen, not diminish, but increase forevermore, is the chapter on enthusiasm, meditation, and wisdom. And then the dedication is that I dedicate that all of this virtue, if it hasn't, may it arise. If it has arisen, may it not diminish. And if it has arisen, may it not diminish, but grow, may it grow. So that's the dedication. So we'll go over that another time more, but I think it's so cool that we can take that small stanza, may the supreme jewel, the bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow. 3 stanzas, that which, may the supreme jewel bodhicitta has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which is not, that which has arisen not diminish, and that which has arisen increase. So we'll look at that another time. So I hope it wasn't confusing, but I thought I'd share that with you. The first 3 stanzas, first point. Next 3 stanzas, next point. So there's a wish to achieve, to have bodhicitta arise. If it arises, not fall down, like we talked about, you can lose your bodhicitta. And then that it just increase more and more and more to the point that you become a Buddha. Okay, that's enough out of me about that. So we'll do long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness for beings, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara's ends. And a prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche to please come back. And may we ask all of the lamas who've passed on to please come back. Jeffrey Hopkins, please come back. Gen Nenden Jambel Drapalat, please come back. Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, Demoloja Rinpoche, Khensur Lobsang Gyatso Rinpoche, please come back. And here we're making supplication to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend, who is inseparable from Arya Tara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ah Om, Om Ah Om, Om Ah Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like a teacher who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings of beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away and understood the sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope this has been of benefit to you. I hope you can tame your mind a little bit more every day to the point where it's super tamed and there's no more afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience, keeping you from experiencing freedom from suffering forever and keeping you from experiencing bliss forever. Samsara has no beginning but has an end. Nirvana has a beginning and has no end. Buddhahood has a beginning and has no end. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.